Chapter 3. The Death Changed All. Both new vampires are at the begin of 20 and at their education to a mechanic. They decided to finish first their education. First things first. With their new vampire skills it was possible to finish the education sooner. Both didn't need sleep. That is the reason why they study and exercised every day and night. They practice on own cars. 2 years later they were finished. After the successful end of the education, Sam and Fino go to Germany army called Bundeswehr. The army teach them shooting and the handling with grenades and other kind of explosives. Fino was very pleasured about the explosive equipment. After his duty he starts and finished an education to pyrotechnic master. He studied all about firework and the different explosives. For Fino it was not enough. He wants more and finally an old Vietnam War soldier. The army soldier teaches him all about the activation of bombs. From dynamite to nitroglycerin, Fino learn a lot. The best education to learn and to construct bombs is to deactivate them. After the army, Sam go back to his job as a mechanic. To shoot with big guns was fun, but for vampires it will be sooner or later boring. Every fool can shoot with guns, and every tiny pussy feels like King Kong with a real weapon in his hand. To pull the little trigger is so easy that children can do it, and they already do it in Africa and USA. Every year, one and more times, there is an amok in US schools. In Africa shoot 12-year-old boys with AK-47. That's not a miracle. The Kalashnikov is easy to use. No mud, no water and no overheating are problems of this weapon. But we should come back to Fino. After his excursion in the world of explosives, he comes back to his job as a mechanic. He starts in the same company than Sam. Through the army time, the vampires drank a lot of donated blood and contacted other vampires. All questions were answered. For example, vampires didn't drink blood for the hemoglobin, they drink it because blood gives them their supernatural power. That's the catch of the curse and the immortality. Blood is a spiritual currency. You pay the power with it. The most effective and most powerful is the own blood. A vampire can't drink his own blood, but they can drink a lot of blood from other people. For example, they are double so strong and so fast than a normal human. A human can get this power if he exercise a lot of sport and swallow performance enhancing drugs. In the opposite of the cinema, they react never allergic to silver, wood or holy water. In the sunlight they don't burn to death, why should they? But they get very fast the sunburn and see very bad in the glaring light. Their noses and ears are more sensitive than our human. The powers are also their weakness. Glaring light, strong smell, high tones and deep temperature are bad for undead. Yes, ice and snow is a great weakness. Fino and Sam become frozen in the first winter and can't move for days. That's the reason why no vampires live in Alaska, Siberia or other countries with low temperature. Vampires like warm countries. With strong sunglasses and a very good sunblocker, they are able to walk hours in the sun. More vampire powers are to look into the future and read minds. That is easy for you if you live for a long time. When you see a lot, all will be clear and understandable, like the scene in Blade. If you understand the nature of a thing, all will be calculatedly. If you live a few centuries, you have seen nearly all what can happen. All vampires are able to jump very high and far with their supernatural power. But very old vampires can fly. Hardly a vampire lived thousands of years, and that's the reason why flying is very seldom. If you drink a lot of blood, you get extraordinary supernatural powers. From decade to decade, vampire bodies will be harder and stronger. After approximate a century, vampire bones are hard and powerful like steel. They didn't break anymore. In connection with magic, bloodsuckers are able to shoot fireballs and lightning out of their fingers. Both young vampires didn't have any superpower. But they have without power a lot of fun. Mainly in the disco. If Sam and Fino go dancing, they use always special ear protection and sunglasses or contact lenses. The ear protection absorbs more than 80% of the noises. With only 20% seeing and hearing, vampires are able to see and hear the same than a human. To begin, they sleep in boxes and later in coffins. They tell another vampire of their sleeping behavior, and the vampire laughs as loud as he can. After he was stable again, he asked them in which movie they see this. Sam answered at Dracula. The vampire laughed so strong that he can't stand on his own feet and crashed on the floor. He gets cramps and tears flows over his cheeks. During the laughing he repeated, "At Dracula! At Dracula!" The boys were angry. But what should they do? They wait until the laugh attack ends. After he stopped laughing, he tells the movie watcher that they can sleep in beds and dump the coffin. Only very thick curtains to keep the sun out are important. If they didn't use curtains, they will get a big sunburn. The light doesn't disturb the vampire sleep, but it can burn the skin to deep red. Nobody can accept that a deep sunburn didn't hurt and heal in a few hours or days. That is very suspective. Sam and Fino realized from the first day as a vampire that they didn't need sleep. Only stiffness a few hours per day is necessary. In the stiffness they lost their consciousness and get a rigor mortis. But this doesn't happen without a warning. A vampire can decide when it began. If they came in the near of their stiffness, they feel a kind of tiredness. With these lots of advantages, they have also some disadvantages. For example, vampires can't have sexual relationships. To fuck, it is necessary to have a pulse and a heartbeat. For a stiff penis, you need a working blood circle. An undead, like a vampire, hasn't a working heart. Female vampires are able to have sex as much as they want, and they do it often. It is not testified if they get an orgasm. Maybe they like to have sex, and they get the feeling of be alive. Technically, it is possible that they get an orgasm. Their nerves are intact. That is not the same than feel less in the case of vampires. Vampires feel less pain, but they have feelings like pleasure, sorrow, pain, and a taste. But that is not important. In the past, Fino and Sam haven't had sex, and so they couldn't miss it. Both regret to didn't do that experience. But what you not know, you can't really miss. Nevertheless, both vampires dated girls. After a few months they get girlfriends. Sam was together with Fiona, a cute little Italian girl, and Fino gets Carmen, a sweet blonde German girl. Both girls were very slim and with a sporty body shape. The vampires had so a crush on the girls. For the boys they have the beautiful eyes of the world, with the most sensual lips and with the grace of godness. In reality both girls were beautiful, but not like godness. Only the boys see them like this. They aren't able to fuck them. But the girls like that. Finally, no super horny boys with the intention to get him into the bed. Only kissing and touching in innocence. They go not deeper than oral satisfaction of the girls. Fino and Sam explained the girls that they were impotent and that were the reason why they can't have sex with the girls. Principle, it was the truth. Of their bloody ambitions, the girls didn't know. When the girls visit them, they hide the blood bags in a fridge in a secret hiding place in a wall of their apartment. The cooling area was planned and built by themselves. It was a great time for the couples. They go to the cinema, in restaurants, and have a lot of fun without traditional sex. From normal sport like jogging to swimming, they do all together. The girls were very satisfied with the mainly oral sex, but that can't be going forever. The vampires were very tireless by the oral satisfaction, but after a time the girls missed to be fucked very hard. Sam and Fino tried to solve this problem with sex toys and fixed dildos. For the moment it worked, but not forever. The years comes and goes, and question like marriage and children comes in the mind of the girls. After a few years, the relationship ends and the girls leave the boys. To live without sex was not a problem for the women. A life without children was impossible for the women. After this disaster with their girlfriends, both didn't want anything from other women for the next time. Their favorite doing was working to earn as much money as they can day and night. Working was the only one in their life. From Monday to Friday, every day they go working and repair cars, change tires, parts and oil. Searching for mistakes were their whole day. So boring it was also reassuring. Always the same, and a continued repayment give a good feeling after a long time. In this time they work hard and do nothing private. At the weekend they go nevertheless in discos to dance and to meet people and friends. They dated also women, but they didn't do more than kissing, hugging and a little bit oral sex. They didn't want girlfriends. The pain of the loss was too strong every time. Sam and Fino didn't want girlfriends, but they feel very attractive to the other gender. But 1 week was the longest time they keep a girl. It was too dangerous and the boys didn't want to get hurt again. After 10 years of working day and night, the vampires were bored. They work nearly 24 hours without sleeping and without tiredness. Only a few hours of stiffness per day they have to do. But they can decide when the hours begin. They started stiffness between the second or third job they did in the break. With the hard and many work, the boys earned a lot of money. For their apartment, electricity, water, food and some blood packs, they need not so much money. No food except a little bit for the waste, no washing substances except the few they needed, no drinks, and hardly petrol for their cars. With their vampire powers, they are able to run very fast or ride a bike. In the opposite of the thing you believe, blood packs are not very expensive if a vampire works in a blood bank, and contaminated blood is always free. HIV or AIDS, hepatitis and other contaminations can't hurt vampires. Why should it? They're already dead. Such diseases can't damage the vampire body. Virus and bacteria can't live in a dead body. If they can, what should they do? Dead is dead, and no parasite can damage a vampire body. The reason for the resistance of vampires against diseases is also the strong immune system. In blood banks and in hospitals are vampire employers. Over these workers, vampires are able to order blood packs with a password. For a half liter of blood, humans were good paid or they donate for free. That's the reason vampires mustn't pay a lot of money for the blood. When they use it with care, they need not much. Blood-covered faces and mouths are relicts of the past, bad movies and the time where vampires suck blood directly off necks, so far we know. Such a wasting vampires can't afford. Besides, it was big dirt and wasting of food. To save blood is more economical for human and undead, and you get more blood from a live human than from one suck. So vampires get enough blood without killing people. Now it is clear why the blood banks always empty and they need blood. That's the reason why humans should donate blood as often as they can. After 10 years of earning money, Sam and Fino didn't have to work. They keep enough at the bank for decades. Only for big wishes they have to work sometimes for a few months to earn fast enough money. The rest of the time they visit discos for dancing and meet other vampires, or they educate themselves. Both vampire dance a lot in the disco and talk with peoples or women. The boys weren't able to fuck them, but it was cool to flirt and get a female opinion. Since the disaster with the girlfriends, Sam and Fino didn't want more than talk. The favorite of both were met friends or search for new. Dancing, talking and celebration without alcohol. It doesn't work by vampires. That was all they want. The time and the music changed, but something stays similar. Fino and Sam danced a breakdance, normal disco dancing, couple dance and group dances. Someone will be bored by so much, but it was all what they have, and so they keep it for a long time. After a few years it become boring and they were forced to change their life. From one day to another they began to exercise martial art. At first they start sword fight, because it was exciting. Over the martial art kendo they get their first experience. The boys learned sword leading, attack and defense techniques. At Aikido they perfected their sword techniques and learned more about martial arts. But fight against an enemy was only possible in kendo. With soft bamboo swords and protecting clothes they are able to fight. Without it, it was forbidden. After 2 years of fighting and training, they're stuck. Attack and defense in rules. No fight works so. That was clear for the young men, and so they ordered real steel samurai swords. With the weapons they can't exercise in the kendo club. At begin, they go into the forest and exercise there. But after a walker see them fighting and cut each other to bloody pieces of meat, they have to stop it in the public. The walker calls the police and the highest rule of the vampires was in danger. The police catch them on the next day, but after an examination of their bodies they can go. Overnight all wounds were healed and the police haven't any proof to imprison them. After this disaster they exercised only at home or in an old company hall that they found through their escape. Very often they have to stop the training after they cut each other's tummy or chest, or they were too heavy hurt. The boys avoid wounds in the area of throat, head or heart, but they want to learn to aim these deadly body parts too. For a complete exercise they buy a chain shirt and cut-proofed helms. After a few exercises their swords become blunt and they change to wood swords to avoid the expensive sharpening. Only the heart they have to protect it with a chest protection. From then they can beat each other as hard as they want, without the danger of killing. That didn't protect him to be wounded. But the vampire healing power was very fast. The wounds disappeared in 2 or 4 days. At the end of 1 year they were perfect sword warriors. A human have to exercise more than 10 years to reach the same level. After a few years the sword fights become bored for the boys and they changed to weaponless martial arts. At begin they start with different fighting techniques. They exercised at first kickboxing, the martial art of the 4 limbs. With their vampire power they didn't need to train muscles and bones for an effective attack. If their bones break or get a big wound, after 48 hours all healed. To improve their techniques, they started training in karate or jiu-jitsu. Karate teach them kicks, fist beats and defense techniques. Both were surprised that the moves are similar to the sword moves of Aikido and Kendo. That's no miracle, because the most martial arts were developed in battles with weapons. Jiu-jitsu completed the skills with falls, rolling, strangle, beats and kick techniques. In competition the vampires get all victories in all categories and weight classes. It doesn't matter in which fight they struggle or against any opponent. Both win every competition. With their vampire power they were unstoppable. It was too easy. At begin it was a big fun to win. Why should it? But after 10-1 competition it gets boring. With their vampire powers no opponent have a chance. In a competition Fino moves once too fast and the highest rule of the vampires was almost broken. That were the death of the friends. But Fino explained that he was doped. The managers believed him and he get disqualified. No problem for the vampires. It was important that the law of the vampires were not broken. The secret was saved. After this competition the vampires keep totally care to avoid another mistake. To simulate that they are a normal human, Sam and Fino let sometimes kick and hit themselves and move not faster than the opponent. In his 68th competition, Sam wins against an opponent who was double taller and stronger than Sam. After the competition, he stopped his fighting career. It was too easy, boring and no challenge. He kicked a giant man in the ass. Sam understand that this is not a real fight, and he know he want more. At the first sound of the bell, the giant meatball of muscles and bones runs in the direction of Sam to strike him down. Sam only change his position, kick his opponent against his chin, and break him almost his leg. After the angry meatball gets up, he starts a series of massive fist strikes. Only one hit Sam let beat himself that nobody gets surprised by the following. Sam answered with strong fist strikes in the face and the forehead to shake his brain. The beats were so hard that the opponent lost his consciousness, and Sam won with a knockout. Later he explains his victory was only lucky, because the opponent has a glass chin. But he knows that's not the truth. This enemy was a monster and really dangerous and strong, but too easy for a vampire. He was tired to win so easily, and to miss the challenge of losing. Fino need more fights, and time to get the same result. He was a real vampire and loved to be a little bit evil, and to strike the opponent down. Also he liked the smell of blood in the ring, who flow in his action. It was forbidden to drink, but it was also a good appetizer. He gets bored after over 201 fights. That was the reason they stopped their competitions career, and fight from this moment only against each other. From now they exercise and fight at home or in the hall. Finally they get an opponent they need and deserve. Protecting clothes were not necessary. All parts of the body, like teeth, eyes, legs and arms, except heart and head, grows again in a few days. At begin they only beat their faces to mud. Both look like after an allergic accident. All was swollen and bloody, but their fighting techniques and skills get enormous improved. Now, if they want to kill a human, they need only one fist strike or kick. It was fun, but not for long. After a few weeks, Sam and Fino get bored and change to harder techniques. Kicks against the legs, arms, torso and always against the head. To beat each other stupid was impossible. The vampire healing abilities cure also brain damage. In every fight they break each other, sometimes the shin bones or the biggest bone in the leg, the ribs, the elbow, fingers and sometimes the neck. After a few months they had broken almost every bone in their bodies. To fix the damage they drink a lot of blood packs, because they have to work. 2 weeks later, the dirt in the apartment were so big, also with plastic protection, that they stopped fighting at home. Only exercises in the hall was possible to continue. They were afraid that they couldn't clean the apartment the next time, and to prepare the walls with plastic sheets was too extravagant. They need hours to prepare and clean up. In the hall they could be pigs, and the company hall looks like a slaughterhouse. After the exercise, they leave and let the blood and body parts where they fall. Blood, teeth, sometimes an eye, ear or a finger, wasted on the ground with hair and more blood. The walls were after a few months covered with red juice. Over a long time the friends beat each other the shit out of their head. 6 months later they have to clean up the place, because it stinks too strong and they can't risk to be observed. With an ordinary spade they get rid of the bloody parts, after they threw it down the cellar stairs. After many brutal fights and a few years they get tired and deadly bored in all kind of it. In the flying decades the television program gets better. Change and will be interesting, but in 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it turns to boring. Although Sam and Fino exercised a lot of martial arts, with and without fights against each other. They play a lot of games, but after years nothing is for eternity. Rent movies also turned to waste of time, and the TV shows were repeated. If they were humans and no vampires, they couldn't do it forever. After a few decades, it will be so bored that suicide is the only chance of salvation. For more diversion in the life, both searched for an 8-hour, 5 days a week job. That saved their lives. Now they have a function and can satisfy the weekend and the free time. After a few years, they want to improve their martial arts skills and starts a journey in Asia. With their experience in karate, aikido and jiu-jitsu, it was logical to begin in Japan. To their surprise, they learned not more techniques. The Japanese like perfection and love discipline more than the European. But in sword fight, Sam and Fino can improve a lot. With their vampire power, they haven't to learn the handling with the sword. If somebody didn't cut the head from their torso or stab the heart, no opponent have a chance against them. In Japan, they learned in a few months perfect sword leading. They could also improve their skills in karate and jiu-jitsu. But after 3 years, they can't get better, and it was forbidden to fight with each other. That was the start to fight secretly. But with their experience in competitions, they only fight against each other. Their opponent had no chance to win. The silence of Japan's exercise methods and the discipline was very good for the vampires. But now they need action. To get action, both traveled to Thailand to study kickboxing. After a few months of training, Sam and Fino start competitions again. The Thai opponents were not soft in the ring and kick and fight like beasts. That's the reason Sam and Fino want to fight again in competitions. The little Thai were weaker than the vampires, but their kicks are very dreadful. Bleeding was no reason to stop. It was a motivation to fight harder. Only unconsciousness was the end of the fight. For the careless Fino, it was a paradise. He get hits in his face and could struggle almost as hard as he wants without that. Only his speed he had to control. He had to move fast in the ring, but not faster than a Thai. That were also a surprise, and they wouldn't break the highest rule of the vampires. After a few fights, Sam lost his pleasure for competitions again, and stopped to fight. For him, it was only a good training. Nobody could win against him, but it wasn't a pleasure for him like Fino, to hurt the opponent badly. After 2 years, the fun was totally gone. Both vampires need silence. That's the reason their exercise next only defense martial arts for body and spirit. In China they tasted the different Kung Fu styles, from Sanda to Wing Chun. After over 10 years of martial art journey, they get enough of learning. Now they were perfect fighters and warriors. Sam and Fino liked the time of exercise, but they think also that it was a waste of time. The vampire rule would forbid the application of their skills. They can and have to run faster than any human. It was not necessary to defend themselves. They are nearly immortal. For a diversion, the friends want to learn the opposite of killing. They want to save life. With that principle, they fly to Australia to be a lifeguard, swimming, diving and saving humans in the wave breakers. No problem for vampires. Only sunburn, glaring light and bloody wounds are things they need a lot of discipline. With the Japanese training, they get enough of all. Against the sun, the boys used waterproof sunblocker and sunglasses. The lust of suck fresh blood they get rid of with a lot of discipline. Normally bloody jobs are not allowed, but also not directly forbidden. It is only not recommended to avoid such jobs. Very fast a vampire can't resist to drink directly blood of a human. That's always a dead judgment. To avoid the lust of blood, they drink every morning 2 blood packs. Together with the Japanese discipline, they haven't any problem with bloody wounds. After the job will be boring, the boys leave Australia and fly to Africa for safari. The many competitions were so brutal that they have no intention to kill animals. The vampires helped to catch criminal hunters, and they take them in prison. Over 6 months they travel in whole Africa and watched animals and the countryside. From time to time they stopped and hunt poachers, murderer, thieves and violator. They also killed men, without breaking the highest rule of the vampires. The men forced girls and women to a female gender trimming. Such monsters, they suck very slowly the whole blood out of their body. If somebody didn't know what a female gender trimming is, Google it. But be warned, it is very disgusting, terrible, and you can get nightmares. For me, it is one of the worst things what human can do. If I think about it, I feel hate and want to kill everybody who is involved. Inform yourself and decide by yourself. I only know I want to kill all of them. On some journeys in Africa, especially in Congo and other states, they searched for diamonds and gold. They didn't find a lot, but that doesn't matter. They were rich since years. As next, they visit America and USA for 5 years before they return to Germany. Sam and Fino drive with motorbikes through a few states, eat hot dogs, hamburgers, donuts, and all what they want to test. It wasn't possible to live from the food, but they were satisfied from the taste. In the USA they were able to shoot with any weapon they want. In the German army their curiosity wasn't totally satisfied, but they get care about weapons. Both shoot like nuts and get a new feeling for the different guns and rifles. Like their time in the army, they learn very fast that shooting is boring and too easy. Every jerk can pull the trigger. As a perfect warrior, they understand the senseless of this kind of war art. Every idiot is able to shoot and get a feeling like a god. Both vampires think that is disgusting and pitiful. In Mexico, they eat tacos and drink tequila. Brasilia and Colombia provides them with possibility to taste original coffee and drugs. As a vampire it was not possible to get addicted. Alcohol shows no reaction, and other drugs had also no or hardly a reaction on vampires. Between the drug and food tasting, they visit the culture of the countries. From the music till Inca temples or pyramids, they see all. After a few months, they get bored and traveled to Canada to be a lumberjack. Tree cutting with axe was a long time an absolute favorite of the boys. Nothing is so satisfying for a man than to be destroyable, brutal, and to do something useful and productive at the same time. They have to cut thousands of trees before it gets bored, and they searched for a job on a fishing boat. 2 months of fishing, they arrived Alaska and see the icy desert for 1 week. After they used the last heating bag, their joints began to get stiff. Moving were from hour to hour more difficult. Before they get totally stiff, they leave Alaska and fly back to Germany. A few months they toured in Europe, but after 1 decade of adventure travels, nothing were tensed enough for the young man. Only visits in cemeteries was now their favorite. In all graveyards all over the world they feel always at home. The architecture, the smell of the graves and the silence was the best in their life. But in England there was a place where they prefer. After approximately 20 years of travel they lost their fascination for journey. All would be for a human as the heaven on earth will be for a vampire after a few decades torture. The most vampires are not able to live forever. Only a great curiosity and addiction to knowledge, a vampire are able to live for centuries without getting tired. Sam and Fino were young vampires, and they didn't lost their will of life. At this moment it was only a few decades gone, after they transformated to vampires.